is a good way for us to introduce you to our viewers is to ask you to tell us a little bit about what you do. So there are two things I'd like to ask you about. One is the work that you do, which is a bridging work, right? So you bridge two, three communities together in SAP. Tell us a little bit about that.
So thank you so much for having me on your show and for the kind words. So my
Mm,
role at SAP is threefold. Number one, I bring customers together on a single platform,
mhm,
virtual or in person, and get them to talk to each other so that they can learn from each other and their experience of using SAP. And number two is to get their feedback within SAP, not individual customer feedback, because there is a different mechanism for that, but anything that I find across the customers, which is kind of systemic in nature. If
mm,
there are any feedback, then I bring them back into SAP and let the respective people within SAP know so that those systemic issues can be addressed
mm,
at the systemic level. Third is I bring all new technology and products that SAP brings to the market to these customers in that related context, and so that they can learn from SAP and SAP partners in terms of what technology can and how technology can actually help them achieve the business results that they want to achieve.
okay. So, so I use the word bridge quite accurately in that you and it calls on a whole range of different skills, right? And also knowledge building in terms of the space. You have a broad knowledge base around what not just what's happening in SAP, but what's happening with the customers, or also what's happening with suppliers and vendors that are supporting SAP and your customers, right? Okay, so that's one, and that entire skill sets that you have now, that you need to have. You also have another role that you kind of in passing shared with me, but not really in passing. You're a blogger. You do a podcast. I mean, I don't know where you find that, but never mind. You're a blogger. You do a podcast, and you've written 3 books and another 3 in the making. Tell us a little bit about where does that all come from and what's it all about?
So this is a question that a lot of my colleagues ask me as well. But I think, given the nature of my work, when I bring these communities together, there are times when I bring industry-specific customers together, so there is industry knowledge. I bring
Mm,
function-specific communities together: HR, procurement, marketing, finance, and so that's something that I learn as well. And then, of course, leadership as a topic as well.
mm,
So at one point in time, maybe about 13 years ago, I thought that it might be a good idea to kind of express myself as well. So that's been a very important part of my personality, is to be able to express what's going on inside of my head. Earlier I used to do in meetings and with people, but then I realized that blogging would be a good idea to do that self-expression. So I
mm,
started 13 years back, and I've been blogging. I just published my 989th post last week. So in a month, maybe, or in a few weeks, I'll be publishing my 1000th post, which is nice. It also, when I go back 13 years and read what I've written about a particular topic,
mm,
and today what I think about the same topic, I realize that where my views have changed, where my views have not changed, which means that
mm.
views have been consistent. And at the same time, it also shows me where I have grown as a person, as a leader, and where my thinking has grown as well. So that's one reason why I continue to blog.
Mm,
And it also gives me a way to process things. So whatever I learn in all these meetings, in all these conversations, I synthesize all of that and kind of publish what my thinking on those topics are. And then of course, those are short term, and then these are the 3 books that you spoke about. This is the
yep.
latest one, Being Happy. It's a collection of short stories on happiness. This was the second one, called Thrive. mindsets and skill sets required to succeed in a world dominated by smart machines and intelligent
Mm.
algorithms, which is the world we live in right now, right? So yes,
Yeah, this is the
when
one
I
that
wrote this book,
that's the one you wrote for your son
yeah,
5 years ago to prepare
yeah,
him for a world where AI is going to become dominant in it. Ah,
correct.
okay,
So
yeah.
I thought it would take about 10, 15 years, but we are already in that world. And this was the
Mm,
first one that I wrote, which is your startup mentor for people who want to who have no idea about startups, but want to start. It was written in the
mm,
form of a business poem.
mm,
And the podcasting is something that I do as my own personal university.
mm,
I reach out to people whom I look up to on a particular topic and ask them to be on my show. This
mm,
is my way of picking up their brain, understanding their thinking, and at the same time, because I publish and promote it, it also helps them. For example, a lot of times these are people who have just published a book or
mm,
just published a course or whatever. So I help them promote their work and introduce them to the following that I have on social. And at the same
mm.
time, everyone who's part of my community, who people who follow me on LinkedIn, who subscribe to my newsletters, who read my blog or listen to the podcast, to also be exposed to new thinking from that point of view. So everyone
Mm,
benefits. So that's the reason
mm,
why podcast. I would have
mm.
loved to do a lot more consistent with my podcast. I mean, there are times when editing of the podcast and publishing an audio or a video format is a lot more time consuming than writing a blog, which I can do wherever I want to.
Wherever you
So
are, yeah. That's,
so
okay.
even then, 67 episodes on the podcast as well. So
Oh,
yeah,
okay. Right. So I think we can appreciate the amount of work that goes into putting together a show and doing it with intentions and for a purpose. So thank you for that, because it kind of gives us as well as our viewers an idea of where you're coming from, and how you think about things, and what we're going to talk about in a short while around unrealistic or realistic expectations in terms of radical acceptance and things like that, right? And how then does that work in that space that we takes a lot of our time, i.e. called work. Right. So I'm going to pass the baton to Muller so she can get started going. You thought what you can cruise, is it, on a Saturday afternoon?
Okay, I'm still digesting the number of blogs he has written,
Yes, yes,
and
yes.
just I was going to be this drama queen who says, "Oh my gosh, look at this guy, how much he has written and what I've been trying to do." But okay, I will pick up the speed and deal with my suffering later.
Mm, mm.
Right, since I'm my suffering. Okay, now that's where yeah, we're going into realistic expectation. So I think it's really interesting that you're able to do so much. One would think that what you're doing is unrealistic. That's from my perspective, Mukesh. Like,
Mhm.
how do you keep the job, right, and be a leader and do so many things, which then rightfully gets us into today's topic. Perhaps you can start with helping us understand, what do you mean by realistic expectation? Or I think you used the word real. I like to really, for our audience, to differentiate the word real and realistic, to start with, and then we take it from there.
Mm,
okay. So I think a lot of us all the time when we look at things, we kind of look at them like this, from very limited point of view. Uh, we may tell ourselves we do this because of various reasons, because we don't have time. This is what I'm responsible for. This is what is realistically possible to do.
mm,
But I think it is important that we distinguish between realistic and real. Now, how do we do that distinction? So, when you actually are able to move from this limited point of view to kind of widen your perspective, to do a lot, to see a lot more, to observe a lot more, and to become aware of a lot more, you are moving from being realistic to being real, because um, the way human perception works is that whatever little that we see or allow us to see very, very little. If I'm not wrong, the percentage is about 5% of what we see is what we are actually, observe and react upon. So if your vision is limited and if your observation is limited because you think that is practical and that is realistic, it becomes that much more difficult for you to really understand what's going on. And what that is what I mean by real, which is the ability for us to move from your limited point of view to broadening your point of view and perspectives to see a lot more, therefore being able to process a lot more, to be able to observe a lot more. Of course, I mean, you will never be able to understand everything that is going on around you, but at least you can look at what is real from a very broad sense when you move from your limited realistic perspective to a more broader point of view. And that is what I mean by moving from realistic to kind of real. And another thing that I've seen a lot of leaders, including myself, I mean, I'm not saying that I do this all the time, but a lot of leaders, what we end up doing is letting ourselves off um, much much easier than we should let ourselves off on. So our expectations from ourselves is a lot lower than what it should be.
Okay. I'm going to ask a follow-up question if you know. So, our expectations of ourselves are lower than what it ought to be.
It's
Why
not
do you
ought
say?
to be. It's not ought to be. It's just that we are capable of a lot more than we give ourselves credit for, than we allow ourselves to be. By being realistic or being practical or being, we kind of allow ourselves to be smaller. There is a lot more that we can do. There is a lot more we can be. There is a lot more that we can achieve, but we tend to limit ourselves by doing this, by being realistic.
Being realistic, being practical. It's a limiting belief, is what I'm hearing you say, right? That this is realistic, this is not realistic, this is unrealistic, and therefore I can. So that's a limiting belief in terms of our ability or capability or our strengths.
Yeah, just simply take my example. Just take my example. Everyone tells me that it is unrealistic to be on a full-time job and write blogs and write books and host a podcast and publish videos. But it's not that difficult. It's just that you need to pick what is important for you. You'll always find time for what is important for you, that you think you're passionate about. So, for example, some people are passionate about gardening, so they will always find time for gardening. Some people are passionate about travel; they will always find time for travel. This is my passion, and this is what is important for me, so I find time for it. So, as I said, we're all capable of a lot more than we give ourselves credit for.
Sorry, Malar, I interrupted you. Please carry on.
No. As he's talking about it, I'm reflecting on myself. That's all.
Okay.
And yeah. So what I took back from you, right, Mukesh, about being real and realistic. So what came to my mind, or what I learned, is this. I think when you use this, it's so clear that sometimes I'm just so stuck in my role, in my thinking, and what's in my head, and I think this is the world and this is the capacity that I have. And what you're reminding, that in the real world, there's a lot more there, whether in terms of knowledge, in terms of thinking, in terms of resources, right? So there's a lot more out there, and we typically, we use the word tunnel vision. So don't be stuck here and think this is the capacity for what you can actually do, is what I am taking back, right? So now bringing it back to leadership. So I think what would be good is that if you could give us an example, right, that you've seen in any leaders, including ourselves, right? So where you see today where leaders are stuck here in the practical issues, in the realistic expectations that's been set to them, by them, for them, whatever, and how they are not able to actually be of more of the real capacity that they really have because they can't see it. So if you could give us an example, I think that would be very useful.
So let's take my work and my example itself, because I know myself the best, right? So when I started off in this role, I would always have this expectation that I will do what I'm responsible for, which is just run these activities, host these meetings, and look at it from SAP's perspective or my perspective alone, which is kind of very limited. And when I started moving away from that and kind of starting to look at it broader and from different perspectives. So for example, I started thinking about, okay, what does a customer's perspective look like? Why do they behave the way they are behaving from a technology adoption point of view? So when I started looking at my sales teams and trying to understand why they behave the way they behave when selling products and services to these customers. When I started looking at understanding the perspectives of the partners and the way they behave and why they behave the way they behave when dealing with both SAP as well as our partners. When I started looking at and talking to and trying to understand the perspectives of even the customer service folks within SAP and how they behave with customers. When I start looking at and trying to understand the services team and how they behave and why they behave. So my understanding of the entire situation increased manifold. What that meant is that I started understanding not only the different perspectives that people have, but also the relationships between all of these different stakeholders and the interactions that they have amongst themselves, and how all of that is kind of leading to a systemic issue, which kind of keeps customers not being able to benefit from the technology as much as they could. Now, what that does is when I now have interactions with any of these stakeholders, I don't go with a fixed mindset that you are doing this and because of this there is this issue. So when I go to them, I try to explain to them this web of interactions, this web of systems, and how each one of us is behaving and how that is kind of leading to the issue that we're seeing in the market. And that has actually done three things for me. Number one, it has created credibility for me within the customers. So now when I go and talk to my customers, they actually sit up and listen to what I have to say. Number two, it has given credibility for me within my organization as well. So when I go talk to my stakeholders, they understand what I'm talking about and where I'm coming from. And not only that, they also understand slightly more broader. So their vision is slightly more broadened in a way. My hope is that all of this will lead to better understanding of how this entire system work, how this entire web of interactions work, and overall improve how we serve our customers and how they benefit from using the technologies that we bring to them. I can already see that happening in some instances. Some customers have started implementing some of the ideas that we jointly discussed, and which is kind of having an impact on how they run their business. It also slowly started having an impact in terms of my stakeholders within my company as well. Whereas they used to come with their fixed way that, okay, you want me to present on a topic? Here is my standard presentation. So when I now talk to them about, okay, here are things that we need to understand. Would it be possible for you to, make a presentation or deliver it in this way so that, it reaches them better, it has a better impact. Some of them have started changing the way they approach these presentations and this conversation, and which again helps improve the overall maturity of technology adoption within my customer base. So I'm seeing benefits of that. They are slow, but they are permanent, which means that it is not that these changes will go back the day I stop talking about this. A lot of times people change, but the change is kind of temporary. So they do it for a period of time, and then when the pressure is there, and the moment you release the pressure, they go back to their status quo. I believe strongly that the changes that I'm seeing both internally and externally, the small shifts in mindsets, um, at least I want to believe that they're permanent, which means that it doesn't matter whether I'm there or not, and doesn't matter
It's
whether
good.
I'm involved or not. When they talk to their next set of customers in a different context, they will learn from what we have done, and that learning will will be useful in those interactions as well. And that is how you shift.
Shift. Yeah. Malay, I'm going to interject with just one follow-up question. What does what you've shared, right? And that shift that you made, that transition, that you made, what has the outcome of what you've shared, the benefits, the outcomes, what has that meant to you in your role? And what has that meant to your boss running that whole system?
Yeah. So I think let me first start with my boss. I mean, I'm really, really thankful to her. I really respect her for allowing me to, do the work that I do in the way that I think is the best. So also because of what I have done, it has also given her the confidence to kind of let me run the show the way I think is the most relevant for both
Mm,
SAP, our customers, and our stakeholders as well.
mm,
She has been very kind. She has been very trusting. She has been very, um, how do I put it? Uh, I don't think I could have done any of this if it were not been for the trust that she placed on me. So if you
mm.
actually look at the background, you see the white frame on the
Yep,
background. So
yep.
that's something that my boss gave me, and um, it says there are 3 Lego toys there, and each one of that actually has an inscription, which kind of brings out every one of these aspects that I just spoke about.
Mm,
So
mm,
and I'm really, really grateful for her trust in me,
mm,
and that also makes sure that I'm able to deliver on that trust. I'm able
mm,
to do the best and be the best version of myself, so that the company benefits, so that the customers benefit, and I benefit because I grow as a leader. And
mm,
she has also been kind enough to give me promotions on a regular basis, and grow
mm,
me within the organization as well.
mm.
So what was your first question? I'm sorry, I kind of got carried in.
No worries. No worries. You're validating your journey and your achievements, right? And also the person who paved the way for it. I think so. My question was, what does having got all these benefits, right? That credibility with the customer, the credibility with the organization, with you broaden your reach to others, right? Doing all of that and getting all those benefits, what has that meant for you,
Okay.
and what has that meant for your boss in terms of being the head uh of a department, right? That has that.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
So I think personally for me, what it has done is it has reinforced my thinking and belief in the fact that we can be a lot more, we can do a lot more if only we actually broaden our perspectives and horizons, and think
Mm,
a lot more systemically, and think a lot more. Uh, Understand that things are a lot more complex, and complex problems requires complex solutions, which
mm,
are not necessarily short-term oriented. So it has given me the patience to kind of and um, the acceptance that what the change that I want to bring in, both in myself, in customers, and in my colleagues, is going to take time, and accept the fact that it is going to take time, accept the fact that I am doing whatever I'm doing is beneficial for everyone involved. Now, what it has meant for my boss, I personally think that when my customers meet her and they give feedback in terms of how I'm working with them, how it benefits them, it kind of validates her position in her trust on me, and within the organization, I think her standing, not just because of what I do, because of every one of my colleagues who does this exact job in their own way, that is required in their own markets, given their own reality, has actually enabled her to command respect, both from my CEO as well as all the other senior leaders. So today, when she asks for a meeting for any of our customer meetings, the user groups that I represent or any of my colleagues represent, every single one of these leaders actually take time out and really listen to what these customers have to say, what she has to say, because every one of us kind of gives feedback to her. She looks at the feedback across the globe and looks at what are systemic things that needs to be resolved at a global systemic level. And when she gives that feedback to their respective leaders, they sit back and listen to her, and sometimes they act on it, sometimes they don't, depending upon what their perspective is as well. So as a whole, my boss has been well respected. I mean, there have been many times when there have been layoffs within the organization. There have been reorgs within the organization, and one of the things that Touchwood, her team, which is all of us, we have always been kind of seen as a unit which is small but packs a punch, and which kind of helps her get what she wants, both from a respect point of view, from a budget point of view, from a influence point of view. So all of that, she's able to do that because of the work that me and the entire team does. So what I do here is based on what I see and the customers here. My counterparts in the US, in Europe, in Japan, in China, they respond to what is real there.
Yep. What you've
So-
beautifully given is an example of gravitas and visibility and presence, right? It's a way or method of commanding respect, in that you've got your, not just the content knowledge, not the subject matter expertise, but the ability to voice it and create a presence within the leadership, to say, hey, what I have to say is important. It's not just the content, but I'm bringing something to the table, right? And I'm making it worth your time to listen to me.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Mother, over to you.
This is a rare session where I don't know what question to ask. But yeah. But I'll still ask, figure something out to create some drama. Actually, what I took from Mukesh was really, I think Mukesh, I'm tempted to use the word lucky, but I know you're not lucky. Okay, I think you make your own luck. That's very clear for me. But I think your luck is that you create your own luck, and one luck that you inherited is probably your boss, because what you're sharing is so relevant as to. So for me, I can see how you are sticking to the why of why you do things, right? And that's why you are looking at it, with systems thinking, knowing that you're not looking for simple solution, because our problems are complex.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the for me, while you give credit to your boss, yes, credit to your boss, yes, uh, having said that, I think you have very clearly built your own credibility and your trust factor with all the stakeholders, which is why people listen to you now. Now, when we talk about when we talk about influence, I think what you've done is that you've given us a clear picture of what influence will look like, especially when you have no power, which then gives you power.
Mm.
right? So all that you explained about you, your relationship with your boss, and the layoffs, and how your department is distinct and is appreciated for staying relevant. So, and the other thing that I picked up is that you've been actually telling us like very little simple stories about how you operate, but I think in our business world, this is what we call relevance. So you've actually helped us understand what Simon Sinek tries to understand. Do you stick to your purpose? Why? Who is affected? Who are the stakeholders, right? Plus, you are helping us to ask that question. Now, I know I need to do this as a leader, right? But do I know why I'm doing it? And is this relevant to what we're doing now? And relating it to our sustainability, which is the future. Because you said something that I thought was both funny lah for me, because you said, I think the change is slow, which is real, because change takes time. Real change takes time because it's an inside out change. And you're investing in the inside out change, which is why you are believing that the change might be permanent. I think this is the right time where we actually introduce radical acceptance, because I wanted to ask you when you said, I think the change is slow but permanent. Is that part of your radical acceptance? And for that, I think it'd be good for you to introduce radical acceptance and take it for us.
Yeah, I think that is a radical acceptance for me, and only once I accepted the fact that a change is going to take time, and these are complex problems which require complex solutions, and it is not just me or any one person who can actually solve this problem. The solution requires everyone involved to come together, to realize, to accept what is real, and then think about how do we solve these challenges. The entire concept of radical acceptance, as I was telling you, is important both from an individual point of view as well as from a relational point of view in our work for leaders as well. So, what do I mean by individual acceptance? So, first of all, we need to radically accept who we are, the strengths that we bring to the play, the challenges that we have, or the weaknesses that we bring to the play as well. And we do that. Once we do that, then we can actually move forward. We can decide what to change within ourselves, and we can actually go about doing that change. Unless that radical acceptance of who we are, both with what is good with us and what is bad with us, doesn't happen, no true change actually happens. So, given that, let's just take this example of let's assume that every new experience that we have in our life, let's assume that life is like walking along a river bed, and every new experience that we have is picking up a pebble from the river bed, and kind of that is an experience. Now there are two things that we can do with this pebble once we have taken. There's no choice in terms of whether or not we take this pebble, because life goes on, and as life goes on, you will have experiences. Time will pass, so which means that you will be given these pebbles whether you like it or not. You will be given experiences whether you like it or not. So constantly over a period of time, you have these pebbles. Now there are only one of two things that you can do with these pebbles. So you can actually experience this pebble in its completeness, and let it go, and accept the next one. Experience it, let it go, accept the next one, accept it, and then let it go. Or you put it in your backpack, and carry it with you wherever you go. Now what happens is, with a lot of us, it still does to me as well, but what I tend to do now is less often than it used to in the past. So and once you keep these pebbles in your backpack, which is you're holding on to these experiences and emotions that these experiences cause you, very soon you will find that the backpack starts weighing you down. The pace at which you can move in your life slows down because of the weight you're carrying on your shoulder. You start becoming more and more lethargic. You kind of feel that the world of the weight of the world is on your shoulders. You kind of Yeah, it's not a good feeling at all, and it creates a stress. It creates the limitations that we put on ourselves, because with all that weight on your shoulders, obviously you don't think you can do
More.
a lot of things that you want to do. So that kind of moves us from being real to moving towards more realistic, and kind of accepting that we cannot do, or we are not capable of doing that which we are capable of. Now,
Mm.
there are two ways. As I said, the first way was to kind of experience it and let it go. That is radical acceptance. You accept what comes to you. You experience it fully. You emotionally, go through whatever emotions those particular moments spark in you, and you decide to let it go, and then you are ready for what to do about it. You can, when I say fully experience it, you can learn from what that moment taught you, and then you are free to do what you think is the next right step in your journey, what the next best thing that you can do in your journey. So if I have to, again, one another way perspective to look at this is, uh, the way our mind functions is as below. So number one is, there is a sensory experience that we have. So we touch something, we hear something, we see something, we smell something, or whatever. Then our mind attaches a meaning to that experience, the sensory experience. This meaning could be you feeling good about it. Someone calls your name, you feel good about it. You suddenly hear something, go off, loud noise, you attach a meaning to it. And depending upon what meaning you attach to that experience, creates an emotional response. And based on that emotional response, you actually act. Now, in the entire four-step process, the only place you have control over is where you attach meaning to the experience that you had. You don't have control over the experience that you had, because if
Mm.
someone calls your name, you cannot stop hearing the name. Or if you touch something, you cannot stop the sensory experience that creates. Your eyes are open, so you cannot stop seeing anything that comes through. Uh, Once you attach a meaning, the emotional response is also automatic, and the reaction to that response is also automatic. So the only place where you have control is attaching the meaning, and that is where, if you accept it completely, which is what I'm talking about, radical acceptance. So if the meaning that you attach is neither positive nor negative, and it just is, you just experience what was, that gives you the ability to then do multiple possibilities that you can then explore, and that is what creates multiple opportunities and optionality in terms of how you proceed from where you are. And that is what is super important for us, if we want to really solve complex problems, to have these optionalities, to understand what are the different threads that we can pull in order for us to move forward, given where we are.
Mm. So
Nice.
what did you have to radically accept to move on?
So I had to accept the fact that, as a person, as an individual, I had to accept the fact that my strengths lie in, the ability to think through, which is intellectual strength, to think through solutions to problems, and not necessarily emotional ability to address those problems. So that was my radical acceptance, that I'm a lot more intellectual than I am emotional. As a leader, I had to radically accept the fact that uh, people will take time. People do want to do good work. People do want to, are capable of a lot more than they think that they are capable of. People do need, someone to believe in them, that they are capable of a lot more. And all permanent change takes time and patience. So all of this I had to accept in order for me to be at peace with what I am doing, and to accept that what I am doing, the seeds that I am sowing, probably will take a lot more time and probably will not be for me to see the benefit or have the fruits of the seeds that I'm sowing right now. But I know that over a period of time, wherever they go, they will do well.
Okay. Now I'm going to shut up.
Thank you. Because I've got 3 questions lined up for him, he's triggered me.
You know,
He triggered you.
I knew. When he gave the example, I know already. I don't want to look at Malar.
Okay, the first fun question that I have for you is, you said you get peace, right? So is peace an emotion or a value for you?
Sorry, come again. I missed your
Is
question.
peace an emotion or a value for you?
It's both and neither.
Okay.
So it just is.
Okay, I just needed to know that, because you said you don't seem to be, you're associating yourself intellectually, which is my exciting part. But yeah, and I think we'll have another 1 hour separately for that, right? I'm the opposite. I won't say I'm the opposite, but I'm a very strong on emotions and how it makes us. But that's not the point. I think the question I had for you, I think I loved your clarity, where you talk about realistic acceptance. Right now, again, I want to differentiate, because you seem to be, or you have chosen to be in a space where you can practice radical acceptance, right? I want to take you to what we hear in the realistic world. The realistic world that we know of generally, and in our audience who are listening, I hope you will contribute to that. There is no patience for change in the long run, right? I don't even think we think, I think we're looking at how to make babies in less than 9 months, right? Yet perfect, right? So that's the world, the real world, where leaders exist. So I can imagine a leader who believes, who wants the ideals that you want on one hand, right? So one is the radical acceptance in the realistic world that has been created. Number one. Number two is that, you said something where meaning. So what I took back is that we make meaning, which is why we have the emotions that we have, and I agree with you, right? But when we perform as leaders, when we are called into the space of leadership, we are going into a space where the meaning is already made for us. A leader who can bring about change overnight, quickly, big changes, is celebrated as a successful leader, right? How often do we today in the realistic world we see bosses or organization or the structure giving us permission to be real, right? So how do people who are those leaders who are listening to you, and you probably evoked what they had suppressed emotionally in them about finding their peace that you have, what how do they start their journey being in this space where the meaning is different, right? Success is measured differently, right? And they're already there. How do they start the process of radical acceptance?
I think the first step is to radically accept where they are, which means that if they are in an environment which expects them to produce overnight results, then they need to accept the fact that I am in a world where I'm expected to deliver instantaneous results. So that is acceptance number one. Acceptance number two is also the fact that I am capable of doing a lot more than what I am doing. My team is capable of doing a lot more than what they are currently doing. Number three is the radical acceptance also of the fact that if these changes needs to be for the long term, then shortcuts will not help. Then there is also the radical acceptance that whatever I do, whatever my team does, needs to have both elements of instantly what delivers results, while at the same time what are we doing to make these results permanent over a period of time. So always we tend to look at these two things as being opposite of each other, which is delivering results immediately
Mm.
or being practical in a way, and
Mm.
delivering results in the long term, and making those results permanent. You tend to see both of these as opposite ends of the spectrum. But if you actually look at the spectrum and kind of make it come together, you will find that it is the same. You can actually be both practical and short term, and sow the seeds for the long term. What it does require is for the leaders to do the work with their team to figure out what does it mean, what is it that I can do today which can actually help my organization today, and at the same time, what can I do today in addition to that, which can also sow the seeds which will deliver fruits 3 years from now or 5 years from now. And when you start doing this thinking in terms of both short term and long term, is when you will find that these are the leaders who will find that wherever they go, people will follow them. These are the leaders where not only are they able to deliver the performance today, but they're able to maintain the performance that they have delivered. So you will find that these are leaders who are not only able to deliver performance today, but are able to deliver it consistently over long periods of time. Because what they have also done while performing today is they've sown the seeds of performance or high performance from 2 years from now or 3 years from now or 6 months from now. So when they reach that 6 month period, there is already enough already being done in the past, which they can actually benefit from. And it's kind of a snowball effort, right? So the hardest thing is when you start. 2 years down, much easier. 3 years down, even more easier. 5 years down, even more easier. So the point is that you need to start today. And it is hard today. You accept that it is hard. And you don't run away from it. You accept it is hard and still do it. And believe that you have the capacity in yourself to do it. So all of that, again, boils down to the fact that you have to accept where you are, accept that you have to perform for today, accept that you have to perform not just for today, but also sow the seeds for future performance, and think long term. And it is not a dichotomy, but it is something that you can actually do together right now, so that 2, 3, 5, 10 years from now, it becomes easier for you.
Nice. Thank you. I think you very nicely summarized that, radical acceptance is it's okay, for us to start with being realistic, but get to real. And we don't have to be stuck with our binary language. It's not either or, but think of what are the actionable items that you can act on today, which might seem hard, which not just handles your realistic challenges, but also invest in the future that you think is possible for the people, for the purpose that you're serving. I think that's what I'm hearing for you. It's not either or, but you can do both. And that's where the mindset of having the capacity to do more, because you're limiting your capacity, you think now and not future, or future not now, but you're more than what you think is what I'm getting. Yes, I think Mukesh, you wanted to add something.
Yeah, and I think what also is important is doing the work. It is hard work working with your team to figure out what is practical for today, and what in addition to that, or coming up with an idea, or coming up with a process, coming up with a system, coming up with a set of things that you can do, which both give you results immediately as well as results later. By not doing that, what you're also doing is you are in the long term, you are actually robbing this confidence, this ability from your team. So as a leader, if you build that confidence, and if you have the confidence that your team and yourself can actually do the work and produce the results, you're walking the talk, which means that everyone that works for you is learning from you, and each one of these guys will go into different areas of either your organization or some other organization, and they will do what they have learned from you. By not having done this, what you're doing is you're robbing them of these belief, this ability, and this capability as well. So they are not able to do elsewhere because they've not seen anyone else do this in their life. So I don't know whether you've seen this. As people, we tend to not only adopt the thinking of our leaders, but also the mannerisms. I know, for example, a very senior manager who would always address people as dear. Now you talk to them anything and they'll say, yes, dear, no, dear. And then you talk to their team, everyone uses the same thing. Yes, dear, no, dear. The way a leader speaks, the physical mannerisms that they have is also subconsciously adopted by the people that they are leading. Their mindsets, their beliefs, their limitations, their capabilities, also their leadership capabilities also kind of is absorbed by the people that they're leading. So if you feel responsible for your people, and if you really want these people to go out and do well for themselves, it is our responsibility to make sure that we give this experience to them, so that they also believe in themselves and their ability to believe themselves and in their teams. And this way we kind of spreading the right kind of leadership across the world. Over 10, 15, 20, 25 years, you'll find that we have much better leaders, which is a paucity of leaders today, if you actually look at it. Both in the political sphere and in business sphere, there is a paucity of good leaders. And the only way to resolve that is to create these seeds of good leadership that over a period of a decade or two will flourish, and which actually is each one of our responsibility, if you ask me.
Nice. Malan, you got your 3 questions answered? Okay, so I think I'm going to ask a question that hopefully will help us summarize it. I think I'm being smart with my question, so let me see whether I can get it or not. All right. So we talked about 2 things. We talked about realistic or unrealistic expectations, right? And we talked about radical acceptance. So if I were to ask you, if you were to encapsulate it in a minute thereabouts, radical acceptance is, when I heard you, to me, it came across as, what do we need to let go in order to grow? Okay. So taking your analogy, your metaphor, your story about the stones, right? So the stones that you experience it and you let it go, but there are also stones, we are humans, that we will put at the backpack, right? And it's those stones that are holding us down. So how does a leader think about what stones to throw away or to remove from or let go in order for that jump from realistic to real happens a lot faster, so that we can do so leaders can do exactly what you were talking about, right? You're not sowing now, you're not just acting for now, you're acting for the long term. You're acting for the development of the solving of now, but the development of the future, right? So the question once again is, how would you say leaders should think about the stones that we need to throw away? All right, we need to let go in order for us to move towards from realistic and the idea of practicalities to being real.
There is only one way to move forward, which is to accept where you are, to accept all your decisions that you've made in the past, to accept that the world that you are living in, or the environment or the context within which you are living in, and what the expectations are. So whatever happened in the past happened in the past. So you don't. It's a very painful way of taking out each one of these stones from your backpack and leaving them one by one. And it is a long. It's not only painful, but it will take a long time. So the best way is to drop the backpack in its entirety. And the way you do that is you accept who you are today, right now. The way that you are, accept everything that you've done in the past, Give yourself this thing that, I did what I thought was the right thing to do, given the situations, and I'm happy, or I'm at peace where I am today. And
Hmm.
as they say, tomorrow is the first day of the rest of my life, and I make decisions, better decisions, different decisions, starting now. That's about it. So the moment you accept this, um, everything can change and shift.
Okay, wonderful. So, on that note, on the hour, we have to accept that the hour has come to be and to pass, and be real with our expectations of how long this conversation can go on, and it can go on for a long time. So we, on the other hand, have to figure out that today we'll sow for today and leave it here. Thank you, Mukesh, for being with us. And to share not just your experience, but also your hope and your wonder of what leadership can be, not 5 years down the road, but immediately as of today. Thank you so much for being with us. I'm going to move you to the backstage while Malar and I do our closing. But before
Thank
you
you.
do, you're welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. It's a pleasure. Anything else you'd like to share with our viewers before we move you to the backstage?
No, be at peace, accept who you are, where you are, and make better decisions going forward.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'm going to move you now. Okay. So it triggered, huh? 3 questions that you had to get off your chest.
I
to
won't
ask-
be able to sleep for the next few nights, is for sure.
Reconciling, threading. But I mean, no, that's not. No,
Nothing to reconcile. I think it will take many, many cups of coffee with Mukesh. But I'm going to take the best advice that he gave so that I don't lose sleep and have my peace, which is drop the bag.
Yeah, drop the bag. Okay.
I'm dropping Mukesh and all in terms of pebbles that's going to annoy and irritate me as I'm dropping it because I'm going to have a great weekend.
I don't think it was what he meant. He meant, but
no, that's how I'm going to take it. I accept that I am. But I think this episode is different. It's different because you won't be able to listen. You have to slow down when you're listening to Mukesh if you're listening on Spotify, because you need to process the depth of wisdom, which is very valuable in the real world that we are currently struggling.
Correct.
It sounds simple enough, but you really need to slow down to process the depth of the wisdom that he has shared and that has triggered me. Of course, so if it triggers you, know that I am with you. But I think the trigger is really very valuable because he is really calling us to just for once really think about who we are, where we are, accept all the things about us, because this is where we are, and then go forth. It almost sounded like a blessing, right? He said go forth, right? And how do we want to go forth? By serving the present and seeding the future. And I think that's important. How do you solve the problem of now, which is what you said, and so for the future. So that's a lot for me to really settle in with before I can ask him for 1 hour of his time to argue lah. After all, I'll get emotional. He won't be emotional, and then I'll be more emotional. I don't need all that. All right. So passing it back.
No, it's okay. I think I know what your next trip to Singapore would be in terms of scheduling. I think I know who to get you to meet. Yeah. Might be a surprise. Okay.
You don't like me as much as I believed you did, but it's okay. I'll stop making meaning about love between
Yes, love
Yeah.
comes in many ways, and it is with that love that I am saying that that's precisely why we started this show, in February 2022, because we want to hear leaders with different ideas. All right, and it's not the norm. It's not the storybook ending that we are looking for. We're looking at ideas that leaders have that's different and that might trigger you, that may make you question. So yeah, and I think this episode has done quite a bit of that, through. So if you want to do a change, slow down. Are you able to? Can you? And if you don't, then what's at stake? On that note, thank you very much for being with us this week.